when you stopped in Saipan, how come you didn't just turn right around and take back off if they were shooting at you? Why did you stop?
Well, I had to fly. They told me to land long and land downwind. When I turned around to land, that end of the runway is where they were firing at me.
Sure.
I went down to the other end and turned around. See, I had landed downwind, so I knew that I could take off and directly over them. So that's what I did.
But you did. If I was curious, if when you landed, why didn't you just turn around and let the major jump out and get out of there?
Well, I had to wait for them to get the turret open for him and get him out. And I don't know, I just was...
Did you leave the engine running?
Yeah, I never cut the engine off.
So you just hopped off of there, grabbed your medal, and...
Yeah, got back in and
got back in, took off. That's wanting a piece of metal pretty bad.
Well, I don't know. When I look back on that, I'm not sure I would have done it when I got a little older. But it made a good story.
Sure. What invasions did you participate in? Do you remember all of them?
The Philippines, Saipan, Tinian, Guam. I used to know. You got a copy of the book there?
Mm-hmm.
That particular thing, I think, is in the hardback.
Okay.
The biggest island that I invaded, though, that I took part in, was in the Philippines.
So, were you already back in the States when they went to Okinawa?
Yeah. I flew some missions over Okinawa. They call it soft. The worst experience that we had in our air group was at Iwo Jima. It was unbelievable. Boy, it was something.
Well, that would be one of your invasions you couldn't remember, perhaps.
I'm sorry?
Was Iwo Jima one of your invasions?
Well, when they weren't invading it that day, but we were doing salting it up. We went in there later.
When you expended your ordnance, did you just go right back to the ship,
We had
rearm and go again?
We had rendezvous point options. We all tried to go back together. One of the things that you had to be careful about is that if you started back by yourself, chances are there'd be a depth fighter plane somewhere hanging around in one of those clouds up there. So we had a point option, and every time we flew a mission, an invasion, after we made the attack, we were all supposed to go back to the point option. It was probably 20 miles offshore, west, east, north, whatever, depending on where we were. And so the problem that you had, if you were a straggler, there's bound to be a jet plane there somewhere that knocked you down. So the point that we were trying to make with the new pilots, that was one of my problems, was to try to convince them, don't fall back, stay with the group. That's what it said. The Japs were pretty brave, but up until we got an F6, those F4U, now that we didn't fly them, but the other fighter group had been flying F4U fighters, and they couldn't compete with the Zeros. But the F6L scouts that Drummond was making along with the torpedo bomber, they could outmaneuver the Zeros and the Bettys. And that, when we saw the change in the war, there was when the F6s, when all the fighter squadron ended up with F6s. That's when the air war in the Pacific changed.
So would a typical day would be to go expend your ordnance, go back as a group, rearm, and go back again? Did you do multiple sorties per day?
I never did more than 2. Because the time we took off, went to the target, made our attack, come back, usually it took about 3 to 4 hours.
Y'all were that far away?
Well, yeah, we were that far away because we got to remember that when you were launching and landing on a carrier, the carrier was very vulnerable because they had to go straight to let us get off or get back on. And at that time, there wasn't any maneuvering they could do because they were trying to either launch or recover the planes. So you had to have a good coordinator who was handling everything like that. But the carrier, our carriers too, were vulnerable to attack, launching, and recovery. That could be tickety. My biggest problem, I guess you could say, or probably the most difficult I had to do was landing on a carrier at night. Because did you ever see any of the things that they use for the landing signal officer to
The
use?
paddles?
Well, that's why I asked you. The paddles were all right in the daytime because you could see them. But at night, the paddles weren't any good, and they had long fluorescent type sticks. And rather than have paddles in dark, you had 2 sticks. That's what got the boat. So the Navy tried, while I was there, to train some officers in the Navy who were not pilots to be landing signal officers, and it was a disaster. So all of the landing signal officers, by the time I got to the fleet, were pilots. And of course they knew what they were doing, and they knew the type of plane you were flying. They had to be a good pilot to be a good landing, be a good LSO.
Yeah, it seems like I was told that they were usually the more senior pilots.
I'm sorry.
It was my understanding that the LSOs were normally more senior, seasoned pilots.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I imagine that wasn't, at night was even scarier. I have heard stories of the people flying combat and their heart rate, they monitored it in the Vietnam era, to where their heart rate was higher landing on the ship than they were when they were getting shot at.
Well, I could agree with that. Because you were so busy doing other things. Well, I'm sure back in those days, they didn't monitor us like they do in modern time. But they gave us some strict physicals. We had a flight surgeon actually connected to our air group. See, we had 100 pilots in our air group with dive bombers, torpedo bombers, and fighters. About half of them were fighters, and then a quarter dive bomber and a quarter torpedo bomber.
Did you volunteer to be a torpedo bomber?
Well, I
or
trained for it, but I wanted.
That's what you wanted?
I wanted it.
What made you decide you wanted to do that?
Well, the main thing was you could do more damage than any of the other planes, a lot more than the dive bomb or a fighter plane. I could carry more stuff. But we got pretty good with the rockets firing, and we found that we fired all 8 of them at the same time to do it in pairs. Of course, you had to make 4 runs, but it was.
Sounds like the missions were very varied in the TBM between rockets, general purpose bombs, torpedoes. it was a jack of all trades.
That's right.
And to be good at all of those types of attack, you took a lot of skill, I expect.
Well, that's the story they told. I don't know about that, but it certainly you had to know what you were doing, because there were a lot of difference in circling around and lining up a carrier. The torpedo that we used, did you ever see one?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know what it was then, weigh a couple of thousand pounds. But you had to put it in the water at a perfect angle. If you let it hit the water flat, it would break up or run off. So you had to, the first thing you had to do, and that's where we trained a lot, is to be sure that we were lined up to the target in the right way, but also that when the torpedo hit the water, it hit at a perfect angle to go down. We could set the depth on the torpedo. And the day that I got that carrier, I asked him to give me, to set it a little narrow. I asked him to set the depth of the torpedo at 13 feet. And I could get it balanced, and it could go, well, I could watch the wake in the water, you know. It was quite interesting. And I remember after we made that run on the carrier that day, I had a radioman in the back, and then my turret gunner. And my turret gunner was Al Caron, a real nice guy from Pennsylvania. He was a Yankee, but a good boy. And when we made that run on that carrier force, I pulled out away from the AA and I circled around, but we could see the thing being blown up. And I told my crewman, I said, before we rendezvous, I want you to take a look, because I said, you are looking at history. This won't ever happen again in this war, because the Japanese then had one carrier in dry dock and 4 at sea. That's all they had left. And one of those at sea was the survivor of the attack on Pearl Harbor, and that's the one I got the credit for.
Was it the only hit on it was yours, or were there
No,
other?
We 3 of us made a run on it, and the executive and I hit it, and the other fellow didn't drop. He said he just couldn't get it lined up to where he thought it would work. 2 out of 3 hit the carrier, but it rolled over on the side, kind of about 45 degrees, and was going around real circle, real slow. And the dive bombers came in, and the whole squadron of the dive bombers jumped, and it was beautiful. It was. And so got to watch the show from the sideline. Then joined up, went home.
I imagine that was a big deal when you got back to the story to tell.
I got a picture somewhere. If I knew you were coming, I'd get the scrapbook out, but maybe you'll come back sometime. But after we got back to the ready room and we were matching notes and combat report and everything, one of the AP writers came in and said, "Which one of you fellows is Timberlake?" And I said, "Right here." And he said, "Sit down over there and show your squadron mates how you got that carrier." And we got that picture, and we done. Said, because I remember that the picture, the caption of it, showing the other pilots this, said it was this way. Tommy got a laminated picture of it.